Welcome, welcome, one and all, to the latest episode of Ferret Cafe. I hope everyone's doing fantastic this week. Do appreciate that. Yes, you can use TTS during the podcast. That was never a rule. I did forget to uncheckmark some of the redemptions here. Let me do that real. Hold on. Hold on. Let me do that real quick, just in case, because you know the one time I don't do it, then you know we'll have someone coming into the chat and like trying to click on them all, you know, and be like, why is it just working, or whatever, you know. But I hope everyone's doing fantastic today. It's the end of a pretty long week, I must say. It's been a long week. Life has been kicking my life in the ass. Hope everyone's doing good though. Of course. There we go. Should be good to go now. All right. Yeah. It's also pretty much the end of the month. May 30th is the day that we're recording this. And what do you know? This month felt a lot longer than I originally thought. Both streaming-wise and just like length-wise, I felt like it was just kind of one of those months. Just kind of one of those like slower kind of months. And it especially got slower by the end of the month because I was really excited to start the contest for the summer streams, and I was just excited to do that, and I was really struggling to figure out what games I wanted to play, so it was one of those things. It's like, okay, all right, we're here. We'll see what we gotta do. Welcome in everyone, though. Appreciate everyone being here. We got Greedy Waffles, D&D Lucy, Kenobi, and Sniper Blum. Thank you for joining. I appreciate that. We're going to get started today. I guess we all saw that state of play that happened. I'm not going to go into super detail because I'll talk about it on the video game podcast that I do, but that state of play was probably one of the worst I've ever seen in my life. Like, that was so bad. Just everything from start to like almost end, because the reveal at the end for the Astrobot game, that's great. I love that. But everything else is just kind of like, okay, here we go. Lots of feudal Japan games coming out, which is kind of weird. I feel like the market's getting saturated with that. 2 hero brawlers being revealed shown off. Pretty crazy. Not hero brawlers, hero shooters being shown off. Like, come on, like you just don't. You could do 1. I don't want 2. Like, that Concord game started off with like a really cool CG trailer. Like, oh, what could this be about? Thieving and stealing things. Nope, it's just a hero shooter. And then that Until Dawn remake or whatever it is, remake, remaster. I mean, it doesn't really. I mean, does it? I mean, like, does it look better? Maybe a little bit. Like, they did some stuff with the lighting and whatever. But God, that snowball that looks like a baseball that hits the dude in the face, just so disappointing. And then, you know, the other things just weren't my style, like things that I wanted, you know, or like, I guess, personally. So, like, Monster Hunter World, I know there's plenty of people who love that. I'm just not really into that stuff. Silent Hill 2 looks fine. It's not like the Resident Evil remakes, where it's, like, super exciting and, you know, whatever. It just kind of seems like a fine. It just seems fine. I don't know what to say. Right now. Dynasty Warriors Origins, like, alright, sure. But yeah, the Astrobot game at the end of it all was really what was really the only thing that I truly cared about. Everything else, I was just like, okay, like God of War Ragnarok on PC. I don't. I mean, that's great for people who want it on PC, but I'm probably not going to play it on PC because I already have it on PS5. And sure, there's a whole modding community, but you know me, I'm not a huge modding kind of person. Which, yeah, I mean, like I said, like I say a million times, like I don't care if you mod games. I'm not into it, you know. So yeah, not the state of play for me, and I don't feel like a lot of people are gonna like this state of play, but I'll talk about it in more detail on Ferris 64 this weekend. All right. I need a drink of water. So, I had a pretty fun weekend last weekend. I had a pretty fun last weekend. We went to go see one of my favorite bands, and I'm sure others as well. We saw Knocked Loose with a couple other bands, including Loathe, Show Me the Body, and Speed. We missed pretty much the entire set for Speed, not only because we were in the merch line, but because the venue was packed. Getting into the venue was it felt like a 20 to 30 minute venture of just waiting in traffic for it to start moving, which is kind of crazy. You know, it's Knocked Loose has kind of exploded in the past couple of, I don't know. I guess within the last couple months here, I feel like they've really, well, I guess maybe be about a year now they started kind of blowing up. But I remember, I remember when their debut album came out, and I was like, oh, this is really good. It's kind of short, but it's really good, and I was excited to see what they could do next. And then their next album came out, which was like Shade of Blue, I think it's called. I'm surprised Callus doesn't know about that album. But it was even better than the first one. Not as many catchy songs, but it was still really good. And then their newest album recently came out, and it's been a really, really good time listening to that. And I'm so glad that we were able to get the tickets first and foremost to go there, because that place, the venue was packed. It was so packed. Like, for the first time that I've ever gone to that venue, they had to close the floor, like the pit area where it's only standing. And I had never seen that for any other band since I've been going to concerts, which has been a very long time at this point. I think maybe during a Dance Gavin Dance concert the floor was closed, but I was already in the floor, so it didn't really matter. But it's the first time, like, wow, that's a lot of people, you know. So yeah, we pretty much missed Speed's set. They were, I mean, you know, from what I heard, they seemed fine. I mean, they were kind of like they were a metal band, of course, metalcore band, but that wasn't like super interesting. It kind of felt more like that regular kind of metal sound, and I'm not like torn up that we missed it at all. Oh, Greedy Waffles was there too. He went with us. And so, you know, we sat in the balcony section, which is, you know, they're, I mean, say what you want. I mean, they're good seats. Like, especially if you get like the ones right next to the railing. Like, it's a good view. You can hear you can see the entire band. You can kind of take in the entire sights, and also you don't have to deal with like people butting up against you and moshing and whatever. And you know, I say this about any concert that I go to, like, you can do you, but don't expect everyone else around you to want to do what you're doing, right? I had this complaint a while back with like Warped Tour, where like the same person kept crowd surfing over and over and over again through our area. And I was like, read the fucking area. We don't want to do this. Like, they were falling constantly, all the different times. And I'm like, just go somewhere else. Like, seriously. So once again, like, it's not like I'm hating on them for crowd surfing, but it's like you gotta like read the area that you're going through, right? Like, you get held up. You know, you're falling down as you're getting passed along because people don't want to do this. They want to enjoy the show in their own way. And the same goes for like the mosh pits. Like I'm like, you know, a lot of times we're near them, and it's, you know, sometimes it'll get around to us where we have to, you know, knock people away or whatever, and it's like it's fine. Like I don't care really. I don't like the people who like try to not really physically harm you, but like they ram into you and they're trying to get you to join in. It's like, well, the reason why I didn't join in originally is because I don't want to, right? So just kind of you just gotta read the room or read the people around you, I guess. But there are multiple ways to enjoy music at a venue. Like there's sitting, there's standing, there's bobbing your head, there's dancing around, there's moshing, there's whatever. You do you, but once again, just be courteous of the other people around you who maybe don't want to get into what you're doing, right? But in the balcony, it's pretty much all sitting, but you can obviously stand if you want to. The Speed got on the stage, left the stage, and the next band was the Show Me the Body band, which listening to them on Spotify, I guess I didn't really get it because it just sounded like, it sounded like it does, right? And while they were setting up their stuff, the guy came out and he put a banjo on I guess around his amplifiers, an electric banjo. And I was like, whoa, hold on. If this guy comes out and starts playing the banjo, I'm gonna fall. I have to follow them on Spotify. I'm obligated to follow them on Spotify because I love weird shit. I love the weird bands along with the more normal bands, I guess. But I love those weird bands too. And he came out and after the intro song experience, I don't know what to call it, because the first song was pretty much like all synth, and then the guy was like doing a monologue, and then he grabs his banjo and he starts playing it, and I'm like, all right, you've sold me. I will listen to some of your songs. And originally I was guessing that I wasn't going to like this band, but obviously not every single song was great, but they had like it was almost like a Beastie Boys vibe along with like a Smashing Pumpkins vibe as well. And if you know me, I like my Beastie Boys. I do enjoy my Beastie Boys, and I also like the Smashing Pumpkins as well. And it was a nice little marriage. It's not the best way to describe it, but it is kind of like that. And I do have a little bit of video. Too loud. Hold on. Maybe it's too loud for me. It might not be for you guys. Let me know. Desktop. There it is. He picks up his banjo and he starts playing the banjo, and I'm like, all right, I guess I'm following them on Spotify. It actually sounded pretty good. I was kind of surprised because I'm not like usually into the more like spoken word metal acts. That's all I wanted to show. But it's not the greatest band ever, but sometimes you gotta see a band live to get their vibe, and this was one of those bands like you don't really hear the banjo being played on the album. You just kind of figure it's a guitar or maybe a weird effect that they have on the guitar. So my advice to them would be lean more into like, hey, we have a electric banjo in our band. I feel like that would be like the thing they should lean into, because that'll definitely put some more eyes on them. It definitely put eyes. Like this whole crowd was like, as soon as he grabbed the banjo and started playing it, like everyone was like, woo, like let's go. And then after the fact, I think Loath was playing at the time. Two out of the four people in the band, or three out of the four people in the band, like were walking around the balcony, and they walked by, and we were like, "Wait, that's the band that just played." So and they walked back around, and we all gave them fist bumps, and it was like good show. So I don't know. I mean, I don't know if if it's gonna sell, like, the album is gonna sell you on their sound, but it's quite the experience to see live. I guess that's for sure. It's quite an experience to see live. But yeah, that was, it was a fun time. It was unexpected, which is, sometimes you gotta go. There's a lineup of bands, and you just kind of go. Maybe you don't know half of them. 2 out of the 4. Maybe you don't know 2 out of the 4, but sometimes you go into it not really knowing a band, and you come out and you're like, oh wow, that was interesting. I liked that. And then boom, bada bing, you follow them on Spotify and you listen to the album on the way home, or what next day, whatever. After that was Loathe, which is a more metalcore band, but they do like this very heavy synth stuff as well, and they just have an interesting sound altogether. And it's a very technical band, and they sounded good. Obviously, I think they sound a little bit better on the album, just because you can really pick and choose stuff and eliminate stuff from from an album and recorded tracks. But they still sounded good. They had they had like 2 synthesizers out there that they sometimes would all be playing, which was kind of fun. Their heavier stuff obviously went pretty hard, but the more chill kind of synthwave, I guess, is also pretty cool. I also like that as well with the band. So it was nothing to write home about, but it was nice to see them live. I didn't mind it at all. Then of course the final band to come up was Knocked Loose, and immediately you knew it was going to be a special show. I mean, the crowd was really into it. The band was obviously playing at a very high level, and the production was really good too. Like a lot of lighting effects, and they had this ever-present illuminated cross in the background, because the album is all about they came from bumfuck Kentucky, and obviously religion is really deep seated into those more backwater states, I guess you could call them, and just the album does touch on those aspects of growing up indoctrinated into religion and whatever. And they had these panels next to it that were showing images, and they would become distorted and change and stuff. It was just really cool. And then they also had pine, fake pine trees or whatever they were in the background as well, which kind of gave it almost like a Blair Witch vibe, but it was pretty cool. And like I said, the lighting was on point. If you've seen any of the videos that I put on the Discord, it's an incredible light show. They did a great job with all that. And then, they went through a lot of they went through a lot of great songs from their last 2 albums, and they also played Billy No Name from the first album, which is always a fun time. And I this is one of those bands that I just didn't want the set to end, you just kind of wanted to keep going. And there's not a lot of bands that can really get you out of your chair and make you move around. This is definitely one of them. For me, it was very exhilarating, very fun, a fun set. And then at the end of it all was this crazy moment that maybe people didn't see because it's the last video on the list. But there was this crazy wall of people. They split the stage. Or they split the pit right down the middle. Hold on, I don't know why this is taking forever to load. They split it all down the middle, and even the people in the balcony were everyone stood up. Everyone was leaning over the bars. You're not supposed to, but yeah, they couldn't stop us. And essentially, once the song started, the wall of people just collided, and it was one of the most the craziest fucking things I've ever seen in my life. And there's not too many bands that can, on the scale of Knocked Loose, that can kind of do that for you. But that was definitely, it was definitely a crazy moment, something I was damn, like this is like a maybe a once in a lifetime kind of thing, because I don't know how many other bands I go and see live that has this sort of crowd and does these sort of things. But it was pretty crazy stuff. Very enjoyable show to watch, of course. And it was definitely worth my time, I guess. That's the other thing too. Like, I'm getting older, obviously. I don't know if I want to see walls of people colliding every single show. But it was definitely a thing that I was pretty cool. And like I said, I don't know if I need to be in that. I don't know if I need to see it again, but it'd be cool. And I mean, that's also one of those moments where it's like, okay, it doesn't matter if you don't like to do stuff during a concert or whatever, like you're gonna do that, right? Because everyone's in that pit together. And I guess the other thing about, I mean, it's just I guess that's just a bit of a concert camaraderie type thing too. Knocked Loose was great. Really loved that. Probably one of the best concerts that I've been to. If not of all time, just for a while. I mean, I've seen a lot of great performances, a lot of great concerts. Don't get me wrong. Last year, Gojira really stole my heart with their show, and I mean, it helps that a giant cargo ship went behind them during one of their songs, which was really cool too, because that venue is like right on the river there. But the Knocked Loose was definitely more of a crazier experience, you might say, but it was also a really cool one. I really liked that. So, and by the end of it, I think everyone was kind of up and doing their thing, right? Greedy Waffles. He pissed his pants. It was so good. No, someone spilled their beer right behind him. And it looked, I mean, it was like a yellowish beer, and he points down, he's like, oh, that was so good, I pissed myself. And then, I think that was actually during Show Me the Body, so that was there for like ever. And then during Knocked Loose, the guy who was sitting next to him, or a seat over, spilt his liquid death, and it was like even worse of a spill. And so Greedy's sitting there, and he's got the beer, and he's got the liquid death mixing, and then like a poster that we got for free is soaking it all up underneath. And they had a guy come around with a mop and mopped it up. So that was unfortunate. But that's concert life. The one thing I really I talked about how we saw Metalocalypse, aka Death Clock, a few episodes ago, and they had this really great skit. Not really a skit, but just like a PSA. And they were talking about concert etiquette in like a funny way, obviously. And one of the things was like, hey, before coming to a show, just use some soap and shower. Take a shower, because everyone around you will smell it, right? I think they could have done a PSA for, like, drinking at a concert. Like, always be mindful of where your drink is, especially if you put it on the ground near your feet where you're liable to, push it around, right? I feel like that could also be, like, a PSA at that as well, where it's like, hey, you don't need, you just keep track of your drinks. You can drink all you want. I don't fucking care. Just keep track of where it's at. And if you knock it over, like, fucking do something. At least apologize to the people near you, because it's like, yeah, it's kind of gross. But yeah, the whole shower thing was pretty funny. And we went at the Knocked Loose concert. We were in the merch line, and someone smelled like they had shit their pants. And it was one of those like really gross smells in that line. And I was like, yeah, this is why I'm not gonna be in the pit for this show, because if people are already smelling like this in the merch line, I don't even want to know what they smell like after, sweating and whatever being in a pit, right? It's kind of you gotta have some sort of self-awareness that you're like, wow, I stink, but I'm gonna go to this concert without putting on deodorant. Okay, thanks. Weird. Anyway, that's a PSA for everyone. If you're gonna go somewhere, at least at least wear some deodorant. Like, you don't have to take a shower every time you go to a show, but God, put on like deodorant or something. But yeah, it was a great show. I can't complain. Good show. Very very fun time. Yeah, and Poppy wasn't there for her song, which was very sad. No one wants to be around the guy that smells like he belongs in a Yu-Gi-Oh tournament. True. More power to the people who play Yu-Gi-Oh, but, take a shower once in a while. Alright. We had a topic suggestion before we get into the 4-Year Strong retrospective, which I actually forgot to bring my my journal in. I'll just do it off the cuff. It should be fine. But Greedy Waffles actually had a topic idea of just kind of talking about amusement parks, because we're getting to the season of amusement parks, of course, and what parks I'd like to visit in the future, and what time of the year is the best for amusement parks, and obviously I play a lot of Roller Coaster Tycoon, so we also suggested, like, if you were to design an amusement park, what would you do? I guess just to start it off, like, there's one amusement park that I will always stand by and love, no matter what. To my death, I'll probably love it. And that's Cedar Point, America's roller coaster. It is it's the best park around, at least in Ohio. There's other good parks in Ohio for sure, and also into Pennsylvania. But it is like my favorite of all the parks. I've been there. I go there. We try to go there at least once a year, usually. I have my alerts off for this scene, so you're good. Thank you for the follow. I do appreciate that. So if you don't know, Cedar Point is or has the most roller coasters out of any park in the U.S. It's also a park of a lot of firsts. It's broken a lot of records. Of course, those records have been beaten by other places, but it's still a great park to go to. It's got like a little bit of, it's got stuff for everyone, and it's one of those parks that just really, ever since I was young, like I really enjoyed going to, but not too young. I didn't really start to get into like roller coasters and thrill rides. I would say I had to at least have been like 14, 15 when I started to actually get into like riding roller coasters and stuff like that, which is a bit late, a bit of a late bloomer there. But I was a very skittish kid when it came to rides. Like even at like Disney World, I didn't want to ride Test Track because it was a fast ride and whatever. I was scared of Test Track, So it did take me a little while to kind of get out of that childhood funk of like being afraid of roller coasters, and I think it really just comes down to going somewhere with your friends, and just not really being peer pressured, but just kind of being like, oh yeah, I ride roller coasters, I love roller coasters, and then you're like, oh, I actually do like roller coasters. That woo. Because there were a couple school trips to Cedar Point, and I think it was like my first year of high school or whatever, where we took a first trip, and that's where I started riding roller coasters. I think I had also ridden some roller coasters before. No, I don't remember. It's been so long. But actually, Cedar Point was not the first park that I ever went to. There was a smaller park that changed hands a few times before being closed that it's about, I don't know, what is it, like an hour or so away from where Cedar Point is. So it was called Geauga Lake, or it ended up being called Geauga Lake. It got purchased by Cedar Fair, and made into a Six Flags location. So it got a bunch of branding. It got the Looney Tunes in there, and all that. And then, it was sold again, and it turned back into Geauga Lake for a couple of years, and then they closed it down. And the people who bought the park were the same ones who owned Cedar Point. So they didn't want the competition from a smaller park stealing their customers, I guess, and they closed it down, which is the one thing that I guess will always be on people's minds when they think of Cedar Point. It's like, oh, they closed down the Geauga Lake location. That was a lot of people's childhood, including mine. And I remember the first roller coaster I ever rode was called the Big Dipper, and it was a wooden roller coaster. I don't remember exactly how it went now perfectly. I don't remember how it went, but I do know for a fact that the layout of the track is what I base most of my Roller Coaster Tycoon designs off of, where you have an incline, and then before the big drop, there's a bit of a dip to gain a little bit of speed, go around a turn, and then go down and do the Woe Belly moments. That was the basis for my Roller Coaster Tycoon rides for a long time. It still is, pretty much. There was another ride that was there called the Double Loop, which was a corkscrew coaster. Technically, it didn't do corkscrews, but it did the loops. And I also used to base a lot of rides off of that design, where you go up the steep hill, go down, do 2 loops, go through a helix, and then end up at the station. So if it wasn't for Geauga Lake, I definitely wouldn't have... I'm sure I would have liked Roller Coaster Tycoon anyway, but I wouldn't have based my roller coasters off of those designs. I don't actually know where I would have based my roller coaster designs from. Of course, when I was a kid, I also wasn't very good at designing roller coasters, so I did use a lot of inspirations from the rides that I saw from places that we went. The other thing about when Six Flags took over Geauga Lake, they added a bunch of rides that were really cool that I never rode because I was too scared when I was younger. One of those being the Flight of Batman, which got moved to a different location. But it was this really interesting ride where you kind of like lay down or whatever. And it always looked cool, but it was also very, scary looking for a young kid. And the other ride was, it was like, maybe I'm getting them confused. The Batman ride was more of like that wasn't a laying down coaster. The other one I'm thinking of was a laying down coaster. I remember it being neon green, and you laid down for the ride. And that's another one that I never rode, but they moved it to, I believe, Kings Island. You can still ride it. I believe it's at Kings Island. They sold it to Kings Island. I don't know what it's called now, and I kind of forget what it was called back then, but that was the last ride that they put into the place before it was sold. But it was pretty crazy looking, and it still is a pretty crazy ride. It's cool that it still operates, and I would love to one day ride it, since I never got to. There was also a couple of other rides that were kind of cool. There was a boomerang coaster that I do remember riding. I was very scared, but of course I was kind of forced to ride it. I went through this phase of like, I would, I think this happened at Cedar Point as well. I was like 13 or whatever, and I was like, oh, I'll wait in line with my parents, but then just walk through the ride and go to the exit because I didn't want to ride. I was so scared. And there were some rides where you couldn't do that. So I was kind of forced to, live my fear. And one of those rides was this boomerang roller coaster. And the boomerang coasters, they lift you up backwards. They pull you from behind, I should say, and then they drop you. And you go, this one went through like a corkscrew and a loop, and then it boomeranged up, and then it went through the whole thing backwards. And I actually vividly remember this one because I had to sit next to someone I didn't know for some reason. And it was like this big guy who was eating a hot dog in line, and I was so scared that he was going to barf on me or something. And I remember that, and he also had like this. I don't know why, but I remember him pretty vividly. He was wearing like a gray shirt, and he had like this crew cut haircut, like an army sergeant, you know. I remember that pretty vividly, and I also remember the ride pretty vividly because it was one of the first times that I had kept my eyes open during a roller coaster. Before that, I would close my eyes and pray. I don't know. Which leads me back to when we went to Disney World, or I'm sorry, Disney World, and I had already said that I was afraid of Test Track. I ended up liking Test Track when I rode it, but there was another ride, this like goofy ride where the roller coaster was like a airplane or whatever, and like it was I think it was called like Goofy's Barn Buster or something like that, and I remember being forced onto this ride, and I just closed my eyes the entire way through. I remember doing that. Years later, I went back and rode it with my eyes open when I was in high school. But yeah, I remember being so scared I closed my eyes through the whole thing. I heard all the sound effects. Like when I rode it again, I had like deja vu, but I knew I had never seen any of the stuff. But I had heard the sound effects before of like Goofy yelling and the chickens and the whatever. So that was pretty interesting. And then also I do remember riding the there was like this train roller coaster at Disneyland as well, and I remember riding that one as a kid. But I remember I don't really remember if I kept my eyes open or not. I just remember we rode it, and I remember at one point there's like these guys mining on the side of the track. So, you know, whatever. But yeah, you know, later on in life, of course, actually, I remember really loving this Roadrunner ride that was at Geauga Lake too. It was like this little kiddie ride. And I remember one time we went to Geauga Lake with my cousin, and a kid threw up on the roller coaster. And the guy who was operating the ride, I guess he didn't really speak good English, so he was telling people to get off the ride, and then he was like, get back on, and he was like, get back off, and then like eventually, I guess he got frustrated and was like, everyone off. I remember that pretty clearly. But he was having trouble conveying what he wanted people to do, which was kind of funny. Boy, I mean, yeah, most of my memories from the parks are now from when I'm older, of course, but yeah, I wasn't like huge into like thrill rides until like, you know, around high school age, of course. But yes, I mean, Cedar Point is still like my favorite roller coaster destination out there. Like my favorite theme park in general. They got great rides there, and even like the rides that aren't as good as some of the other ones, they're still fun. Like it's not like you're gonna waste your time getting on that ride and riding it, you know. But there's a lot of cool ones that they have now. Like the newest edition is probably one of my favorite roller coasters ever. Steel Vengeance. It's like this really unique train style. It's becoming more popular now. But essentially what they did is they gutted an old wooden roller coaster called the Mean Streak, which was very, very bumpy, and it was like a really crazy design too. Like it was like a really tall ride that just went straight down, and it was wooden, and it just didn't feel safe, but it was really fun. And they used that layout and they modernized it with this new train, and it does like it does like 8 inversions or something like that, some crazy stuff. It's one of these really crazy rides. It's one of the best rides in the park, and the one of the more interesting things is you actually need to take everything out of your pockets before you get on the ride, including your cell phone, wallet, anything that could come off, because the ride is just that crazy. So there's actually free lockers that you can use and put your stuff in for like, you know, the duration of the ride, and you get it back afterwards. So it's a really crazy ride. It's definitely one of my favorites that I've ever ridden. The way they ride it though, you have to be like sitting all the way back with your neck against the back, you know, the headrest. Or else you're gonna be thrown about. But that's kind of what I did. Is my third time riding it in 2 days. I was like, okay, this is the way to do it, because when you do that, your head doesn't get jostled around as much, because you don't want to be leaning forward and get your, you know, whatever. But Anyway, it's a great ride. They also have the Val Raven, which is a pretty cool one. It's one of those. Um, it's a very sleek kind of ride. It's I forget what exactly they're called. But it's one of those ones that kind of stops before the main the main drop. So you like stop for like 4 seconds and then it drops you, which I think those are really fun. Most famously, they have the Millennium Force there, which is like one of the tallest rides, one of the tallest steel coasters out there. And it's still a great ride even to this day. My one fear, which has never been realized, but the one fear I always have is getting stuck on that lift hill. Because it's a very steep lift hill. It's you're very high up if you get stuck high up on there. And it takes forever for them to either repair the ride or get people off of that because it's such a steep incline. And that's just one of those ones that I just would never want to be stuck on. Same thing with the Gatekeeper, which is kind of like this really... It's kind of a unique ride where there's two ride seats on either side of the main train. But it's a really fun one. It's another one of those ones that has a very steep lift hill. And like getting stuck on that would just be very anxiety inducing. I get a little bit of anxiety on both those lift hills, just because they're so steep and it feels like you're about to like fling backwards. I'm sure it's perfectly safe, but it's just one of those things that's kind of in the back of your head. And it is one. Both of those would be a nightmare, I guess, to get stuck on the lift hill. The other rides are not too bad in that aspect, but they could still be kind of crazy to get stuck on. I don't have I ever gotten stuck on a ride at Cedar Point? Knock on wood. I don't think I've ever really been stuck on a ride per se. And if I have been stuck on, actually the last time we went, it was on a ride called Magnum XL, which is a pretty fun coaster. It was built back in like the 90s and it broke a bunch of records back then. Nowadays it's not like too crazy, but there was a mom and her 2 kids, and she had her phone out on the lift hill and she was like recording the kids going up, and who knows how long she would have recorded for. But they had to stop the ride, and a worker had to walk up the stairs to the person and take their phone, and it was confiscated for the rest of the day at the park. But that alone, just that alone, probably because of all the safety measures, that took like 25 minutes to get back up and going. It was like, wow. I'm pretty sure at the park you also get ticketed if you have to stop a ride for that reason. Yeah, I mean, there was one time. Actually, it was at Disneyland. Actually, when I was in high school, I had this like flip camera that I used to use to record everything. I was an aspiring filmmaker at one point, and I recorded the entire ride on that train ride that I was talking about before, the train roller coaster. And I remember getting off of that ride, and there was like a couple of guys waiting at the exit, and I was like, oh no, they saw me recording, and they're gonna take my camera. So I quickly deleted the footage before getting to them, and we walked past them. I don't think they were there to do anything. They were just waiting for their family, I guess. But I got really scared. I was like, oh no, I'm going to get kicked out of the park. But nope, they were there for other reasons, not for me. And I lost the footage of the ride. Anyway, going back to Cedar Point, they used to have this bobsled coaster. Oh man, what was it called? Fuck, I forget the name. It's been so long. I mean, obviously it's not the most insane or intense coaster, but they built a warehouse around it at one point to make it more intense, like pitch black at times, and like a bunch of like neon lights and stuff like that. It was a pretty fun little ride. They took that down to build the Gatekeeper, but it was a pretty fun ride. I do kind of miss that one. It was definitely a vibe. Like when you walked into that building, it felt like you got transported back to the 90s. It was like one of those types of things. Really, I mean, it was a pretty fun ride. I vividly have good memories of that one. It's also one of the rides that I recorded fully while going through, and our last ride on, I recorded our last ride on that coaster. It was like the week it was being shut down for good. I remember we went and rode it like 3 times in a row, and I recorded the last time like almost all the way through. But yeah, it's one of those coasters that, yeah, sure, was a little bit lost in time. Obviously, it's not the most intense. Probably didn't have the most people coming to it, you know. The other thing that I learned about it, when they closed it one day during a rainstorm, was that it actually floods. It for some reason it would flood every time there was rain, so they couldn't run the coaster, and that's pretty crazy. So, duh. I mean, obviously, yeah, they shut it down because, one, it didn't probably have the people it needed to keep it in service, but two, also, for some reason, the warehouse flooded every single time it rained, which I feel like could have been solved by a couple of drain pipes being installed, but hey, what do I know? What do I know? They also used to have a ride called the Mantis that they rebranded to the Rougarou, which it used to be a stand-up coaster, and it was one of the most painful experiences. I don't know if you've ever been on a stand-up roller coaster before, but those things, I mean, stand-up roller coasters kind of suck, in my opinion. I do like the new design, the new Rougarou design for it, where it's just a sit-down coaster. Same track layout, a little bit rough, but it's a better ride now in the end. There's also a ride called the Blue Streak there, which is the oldest ride at the park, and it's one of those rides that's it's not great, and it feels unsafe the entire time. The last time we rode it was because they put because during like the Halloween era for the park, they call it the Boo Streak instead of the Blue Streak, and we were like, oh, that's cute, let's ride it because it's called the Boo Streak. Not a great ride at all. And actually, my other half's sister took her fiance onto the ride for his first roller coaster. And immediately when we heard her say that, we were like, why did you do that? That is such a terrible idea. This ride feels unsafe. Like, if you're going to do a first-time roller coaster, do, like, I don't know, the Iron Dragon, which is one of those flying coasters. The train hangs below the tracks. Like, it's very slow, kind of like kid-friendly. Not the Blue Streak. That thing is, it makes me feel uncomfortable while riding, and I have like 15 years of riding experience, you know. That does lead me to the Raptor, which is a hang down coaster as well, but it's a pretty cool one. I think it inverts like 5 times or something like that. Pretty cool ride there. And then they've recently added a mouse ride that I haven't actually gotten the ride yet. We haven't gone back since they added it into the park, so that's definitely one that I want to ride when we go there next time. Oh, they also have this really like old minecart ride as well, which also doesn't feel too safe, to be honest, but it's one of those old ones that just is like a staple of the park. It fits really well in the space that it's in. I don't know if they'll ever get rid of it, but it's another one that's like, it's kind of kid friendly, but it's also kind of, it just kind of feels rickety, you know. Yeah, I mean, it's a great park. It's got a lot of rides. They recently redid the Top Thrill Dragster, which is like this launch coaster. It's pretty basic. The Top Thrill version of it just kind of boosted you up over the the tallest hill ever constructed, and then it comes back down. That's pretty much it. And that broke down, I believe. I mean, it almost killed a lady last time I heard because a part flew off of it during one of its launches. So they shut down the ride, and they completely gutted it and redid the whole thing. So now, instead of it just boosting you forward once, it boosts you up like halfway or almost all the way up the hill, and then it goes backwards. It kind of boomerangs up, and then it comes back down and it boosts you even faster to go over the hump, which is a pretty cool idea. I like that idea. Adds a bit more to the ride time, maybe makes it more worth it to wait in line. But that's already been shut down for an undisclosed time because they need to redo the cart, like the manufacturer needed to redo something on the carts or whatever. But it was getting good reviews. I was very excited to maybe try it out sooner rather than later. But yeah, it's closed down for the time being. So who knows when it will be back? Which is kind of disappointing because well, I guess it's also par for the course simply because the Top Thrill Dragster, the original version, also broke down like every single day. So I guess it's living. The legacy is living on. In my opinion, the best time to go to theme parks is usually the weekdays, especially during like the summertime, because the weekends are when it really fills up because everyone's off work or most people are off work. They don't have to take time off. They go for the day. So during the week, it's sometimes will be packed, but it's not going to be too bad in all things considered. My favorite time that we've ever gone to at least Cedar Point is during Halloween weekends, where it's Halloween time. They have the haunted houses up. Everything's kind of spooky. We stayed for like a 2-day stay at the park, and there was like then the entire like couple days we were there was like no one in the park. It was literally like walk on most rides. It was crazy. It was only a couple years ago at this point, but it was crazy. It was a great time. We got to ride the rides multiple times. Like I said before, like Steel Vengeance still had a line, but we rode it like 3 times in 2 days, which is crazy because the first time that I ever rode Steel Vengeance, we waited 3 hours in line to ride it. And it was it worth it? Yeah. But 3 hours? The longest I think we waited when we went last time was like an hour or so, which is not too bad at all. But we got to ride everything that we wanted to ride and more, and it was just a great time. I think that the October kind of area is the time when people are too like they're nervous it's gonna rain or it's gonna be whatever, and like sure maybe it will rain and maybe it will ruin your day. I don't know, but we got lucky. It was kind of an overcast kind of day, or the couple days that we were there, and it did sprinkle a little bit here or there, but it was nothing to shut down rides, and we ended up having a great time. It was a great time to go. And also, like, the haunted houses and stuff are really fun. They don't change around too much from year to year, but they do sometimes add a few new ones here and there. But yeah, they're not really. I guess they're not really haunted houses. They're more like haunted pathways. But they're fun. They're fun, and I like doing those. They're very fun. And I think Halloween time is usually the best time to go to really any park, and that's just my bias for the Halloween stuff. Even like when you look at like Disney World or Disneyland when it's Halloween time, there's just like this really fun air, atmosphere there, and the same thing can be said for most amusement parks that do something special for the Halloween times. As for other parks that I like, there's a park called Kennywood that's in Pennsylvania. That's a pretty fun park. We haven't been there in a while, and when I was a kid, Greedy Waffles and I actually went there a couple times together with my mom, and they used to have it was Garfield themed for quite some time. They kicked out the old mascots and it was Garfield, and I loved Garfield when I was a kid. I still do love Garfield. It's not like I don't like him anymore, but when I was a kid, I loved Garfield. I had the comic a day calendars. I had all of his comic book collections that I could get every day. The newspaper came, I would read Garfield. So we go to the park and it's like, okay, I got an Odie, I got a Garfield, I got whatever. We rode the haunted Garfield mill ride multiple times. It was Garfield everywhere. They obviously don't do the Garfield theming anymore, but the park is still fun. There's a lot of fun rides there. I can't like specifically name anything like I can for Cedar Point simply because I haven't been there in quite some time now. And the last time I went, it was a really good time. But I don't remember the ride names. But there's a couple of fun rides. There's a wooden roller coaster that they have that like goes into a ravine. It's kind of unique. Like it goes along some sort of ravine, goes up, goes back down. It's a pretty cool ride. One of my favorites in the park. It's a Woody too. It's a wooden roller coaster. I'm trying to think of. There's also like this bunny hopper roller coaster that's also wooden, and it has this one bunny hop hill that literally makes you feel like you're weightless. It's really cool. I don't know how they did it. It's the only ride that I've ridden on that has given me that kind of feeling. But yeah, it's a pretty cool one. Love that one. I don't remember what it's called. But there's a lot of good rides at Kennywood. I think it's a pretty nicely sized park. It's also, it's pretty affordable too. Can't complain about that. And of course, there's your Disneylands and Disney Worlds. I've never been to Disneyland, the one in California, but it is one that I would like to maybe eventually down the road go to. It seems like a pretty nice place. There's also a park called Hershey Park, which is also in Pennsylvania, and I haven't been there since I was very young, probably around like 11, 12 years old. And I remember when we went, there was a guy who was like, "Hey, we need some people to test some chocolate for us." And I remember filling out a questionnaire while eating different kinds of chocolate, which was a pretty fun time. They've expanded the park a lot since I've been there, but there's this one mouse coaster I remember riding that was pretty crazy. I don't know if it's still there or not, but that's another park I'd like to go back to at one point. Of course, there's always the plans to go back to Disneyland eventually, but you know, it's good. It's pretty crazy pricing and stuff nowadays. Busch Gardens has been one that I've always wanted to go to, but never got around to it. That's in Tampa Bay. Oh, we could meet Callus out there. But that one, I mean, I've heard some pretty crazy stories about the rides there, and I feel like that would be a pretty fun one to go to. Universal Studios, or whatever it's called. I haven't been there since, once again, I was like in high school. And the one ride I remember really, really enjoying was the Incredible Hulk ride. And I don't know if it's there anymore. I don't know if they rebranded it, but it used to be called Incredible Hulk. And it would shoot you out of like the ground and into like an inversion and whatever. It was pretty cool. One of my favorite roller coasters I've ever ridden. I think it's more so like a DreamWorks WB kind of park now, since Marvel was sold to Disney. But I think it's still a good time. I would definitely like to go back there eventually. Other places that I haven't been to, Six Flags Over Texas, I think it's called, or Fiesta Texas, whatever it is. Another park that I've always heard good things about, cool rides. Oh, another park that's around here, Kings Island. I think I mentioned it already. That's one that I haven't been to in a long, long, long time as well. They have a ride called the Diamondback, which was pretty cool. But once again, I haven't been there in so long, so I don't even know if that's still even there, you know? But yeah, it's a pretty cool ride. Yeah, that's that. If I was to design an amusement park, you gotta have at least like 8 decent roller coasters. Everyone's gotta have the Kiddie Land, of course. But you know, I mean, I think that if I took a roller coaster tycoon park that I had, actually, I'm actually designing a park right now. I don't know if it'll run. Actually, yeah, it's open RCT. All right, yeah, I'm gonna show you guys the park that I've been pouring time into. Give me 1 second. Let's see, what's the newest one here? Yeah. All right, give me a second. I need to reposition this so. There we go. All right, and we need to. I love Roller Coaster Tycoon. Have I ever said that before? I love Roller Coaster Tycoon. I love this fucking shit. So I've been working on this park for quite some time in the background, and it's I mean, I took the concept of Forest Frontiers, and I was like, yeah, what if it was like a forest park? I've been watching a lot of Marcel Voss on YouTube, who does a lot of themed parks. So I wanted to really kind of make it into something special. And so far, I think I've done that. I've been trying to save up some money since I last was playing. But inside the lumber mill is a log flume ride that I completely encased in this like rusty kind of metal look. There's also a hedge maze in here encased in like a building. I tried to make it look like a factory was here. And then I have this ride here that I don't know, it's not like the greatest ride I've ever designed, but you know, it's there, you know. Got another log flume over here because I forgot that I had built this. I built that one, the other one. But I've just tried to keep the theming of like a forest, you know, and I still need to, of course, work on it a little bit more. This is a little boomerang coaster that I made last time I was playing. But yeah, very fun. I love Open RCT 2. If you've never played it, it takes that base version of Roller Coaster Tycoon 1 and 2 that you can buy from Steam, and it makes it more modern. It gives you resolutions, it gives you volume controls, it gives you plenty of quality of life features, it gives you rides from both versions of the game, including the DLC parks and packs. So if you have Roller Coaster Tycoon and you've not tried out Open RCT 2, definitely I would suggest going on the site and downloading that, because it definitely changes the entire experience. I'm not gonna lie, it's a game changer. Last year I beat Roller Coaster Tycoon 1 in full for like the first time in many years. And I wish that I had done it in RCT 2, Open RCT 2, because it would have been a bit of a smoother way to do it. I still love the original Roller Coaster Tycoon. I don't think there'll ever be a park management game that I love as much as Roller Coaster Tycoon. But Open RCT 2 does improve on it, so I guess I love Open RCT 2 more than the original Roller Coaster Tycoon. I don't know. What do you mean by open? That's just what it's called. It's called Open RCT 2. That is the name of the. It's like I guess it's like a mod. It's the one thing that I modded. Yeah. You can look up stuff on it on YouTube and whatever. I'm sure there's plenty of people who talk about it, but.
What?
All right. Let's head over into the final part here for the show. Thank you to everyone who's been around today. Do appreciate that. Anyone lurking as well, also appreciate that. I don't want to call anyone out, but just thank you for the lurks as well. I do appreciate it. It does help the podcast, does help the channel. If you want to catch the podcast in VOD form or in audio form, it's available the following Thursday after we record. But of course, if you're here in the chat, you can use any sound command you want. You can type in TTS messages. I also read most, if not all, messages in the chat. Even if I don't respond to them, I'm still looking at them. So know that you are appreciated. Let's jump into the final topic for today, which is my retrospective for 4 Year Strong, a band that I've liked for a while now. We saw them at Warped Tour. Ooh, man. We've seen them at Warped Tour, I think, twice, right? The first time I had just kind of been introduced to the band and I liked them. The second time I really liked them, and I think it was around the time that their self-titled album came out that we saw them the second time. And I had this Hawaiian shirt that had 4 Year Strong and the logo on it, and it was a vibe. We haven't seen them since, which is why I really want to go see them sooner, later this year. But I did make a tier list, as I'm known to do nowadays. The tier lists are in every single episode now. But don't worry, it's not going to be forever. It's just kind of how it's lining up. So, yeah, we got. I have all the albums here. We have It's Our Time, Rise or Die Trying. This one is Explains It All. Then we have Enemy of the World, In Some Way, Shape, or Form. The self-titled. We have the re-recording of Rise or Die Trying. We have Some of You Will Like This, Some of You Will Not. We have the re-release, aka remastering, redoing, whatever, of Enemy of the World. And then we have Brain Pain. And their new album comes out in August, I'm pretty sure. Which it's seeming like it's going to be a pretty good time. So I'm very excited about that, to finally hear what they've been working on. I guess the whole reason that I went back and wanted to re-listen to the 4 Year Strong albums was just a little discussion we were having on the Discord about, are they too poppy in this album? Whatever. It doesn't really. It did spark that idea of like, I should go back and listen to the albums because they have a new album coming out, and I just wanted to make sure I wasn't, I wasn't like misremembering or whatever. I wanted to go back through and make sure I wasn't like, maybe this one is too poppy or whatever. Maybe I don't remember. So that kind of sparked the idea to do a little bit of retrospective, as I've done with Blink-182 and Deftones. And even though 4 Year Strong isn't a band that I talk about a lot, they are a fun band to listen to. They started a long time ago. They used to have a keyboardist in the band as well that stuck around until I believe they left the band after Enemy of the World. But it's just one of those things that it's a band that I fell in love with, and I really enjoy what they do, what they sound like. So if you don't know, they're a pop punk rock kind of band, more so punk than anything else. But they do have their moments where they sound a bit more poppy, or they sound a bit more rockish. Just like any band, they do fluctuate in sound throughout their albums. So it's not, the first album is just way different than their third album, which is way different than their most recent album, which is way different than their acoustic album. They do have a lot of variety in their sound, even though it usually, when you listen to a song, you can usually go, oh, that's 4 Year Strong, right? Because the vocals are pretty unique, and of course the guitar playing is immaculate on these albums. A lot of them, a lot of what 4 Year Strong does is, at least, from their second album onward, is they do a lot of like the crowd pleasers for like a Warped Tour kind of set list. It's a lot of like very loud, always fast tempo kind of stuff going on in most of their songs. Of course, you have those ones that are a little bit slower and they slow down a little bit, but for the most part, a lot of their album discography is those party songs. They're songs that get you going. They're songs that make you want to get up and start moshing, stuff like that. So it's very punk. It's very pop punk at times. And the first album that they ever put out is one that's a bit hard to find. You can find it on like the more sketchy websites, but essentially the album It's Our Time was never released on like a streaming service like Spotify or Pandora. It's not, obviously you have to go like eBay to buy it nowadays, but it's not sold by any distributors at this point. I don't know why they don't put it out on their different platforms. It's possible because they were part of a different label, and the label owns the rights to distribute the album. I think at this point they could probably buy the rights to the album back, or they could just re-record the album, I guess. But I guess there's a bit of a debate in the 4 Year Strong community that's like, should they be re-recording songs? Should they be reimagining the songs? I personally like the new versions of the songs with the more self-titled album vibe to them. And It's Our Time has such a unique feel to it from the rest of the albums. I just feel like, I think they should just leave it, but at least put it in a place where people can listen to it, right? Because at this point, you either have to go on YouTube and listen to people's uploads of it, or you got to go onto a sketchy website and download it, right? And at that point, it's like, well, is it like that good that you need to go right now to a sketchy website and download it? No, but I would definitely recommend listening to it on YouTube. There's a couple of different versions of the album. Some of them are higher quality than others. There's one that I listened to twice through, which was a full album video. Because there was another one that was on YouTube that was like, the songs were all like 6 to 7 minutes long, but like the last 3 minutes of each song was silence. And like, who wants to listen to that, right? But anyway, It's Our Time is a very raw album. It's kind of like, I've heard it being described as softcore, but I would kind of say that it's like a punk emo-ish vibe. It's like an early Fall Out Boy or Blink-182 or something like that, where it's like, it's very much like a punk, but also kind of like, it's got a bit of like that popish emo kind of vibe to it as well. And what really is kind of charming about the album is throughout most of the songs, there's this like little synthesizer interlude happening that's like do 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 do, and it just kind of like puts a smile on your face, because like the rest of the songs like this kind of like heavier, riffage going on, but then you have like that kind of funsy background synthesizer that's kind of present in their first two albums, not so much in their third one, but it's just one of those fun things. Like, okay, there's a bit of a fun vibe to this. I think that in general it's a good album. Like it has a lot of like great tunes on it, even though they don't sound the best because it's lower audio quality. They didn't obviously have the means to record these songs with the highest value equipment out there. They're still fun songs to listen to, and actually, I mean, I mean, I'm not gonna like say like they're the best songs in the world. I need to pull up a list of the songs because I kind of forget at this point because they're not on Spotify, and I don't have my book with me. The first song on the album is "Go Long Dad," which actually they reference a lyric from that in the second album, "Rise or Die Trying." And if you listen to these songs, you'll notice that like it definitely feels like a 4 Year Strong, like in a different version of them, right? Because they have those songs that kind of have the hard-hitting lyrics. They have like the moments where like you're supposed to chant with them and stuff like that throughout the songs as well. I think most of them are pretty fun to listen to. There's a couple in here that are kind of rough, but for the most part, I think it's a decent album. "Go Long Dad" is a great song. I think probably it's my favorite song on the album, next to "Live from the Crime Scene." They also have a song called "Come On Bessie, Slow and Steady," which is a pretty fun one as well. And yeah, I enjoyed the album. I guess that's what I'm trying to say. I enjoyed the album. It's kind of like the first Blink-182 album to me. That's like, it's a stepping stone. It kind of sets up what they're going to be in the future. Is it the easiest to listen to? No, I think the album's flow is a little bit off, and not every song is like amazing. But it does have the qualities that you want to see in an early album by a band. And even though it's a different vibe from what they have in the rest of their discography, I still think that's worth listening to if you can listen to it. I just wouldn't go onto a sketchy website and download it because it's not like that good. But if you can, if you find it on YouTube or whatever, I think it's worth listening to at least once if you've never heard of it. I'm sure there might be one or two people out there who's like, "What? They have an album before Rise? Rise or Die Trying?" It's like, yeah. It's a bit unknown, and I feel like I've listened to this album before in the past, like before I knew that it was 4 Year Strong. I feel like there's a song on there that I was like, wow, this is kind of like bringing back deja vu. It's quite possible that I had listened to this album when I was younger, because there was a time when I was really into like punk bands like Misfits and early Fall Out Boy and stuff like that. But yeah, it's a decent album. I also, if you look at the tier list, we have S, A, B, C, D. This is another band that I feel like they don't have anything below. I mean, they might have something below a C, but I feel like most of these albums are going to be a C and above. I'll keep the D on there for now, but I don't think that's going to be filled with anything. Just a little bit of foreshadowing there, but this is definitely like, it's a strong album. It's not like crazy good, but it's a strong C for sure. It's our time. Next up is the original recording for Rise or Die Trying. I was debating whether I should include both versions, because at this point I really only listen to the new recordings, because even though I like the old versions of Enemy of the World and Rise or Die Trying, the recording is rough for at least one of the two albums. And Rise or Die Trying, I really didn't appreciate the album until the re-recording came out, and I was like, oh. I mean, it's not like I didn't enjoy the songs back, beforehand, but like now I can really appreciate it because the audio quality is better, the singing's better, the recording is better, like it's all just better in general. And they kept the vibe from the original album in the re-recording, so it's not like there's some sort of nostalgia lost. It still sounds like the album 4 Years Strong, the Rise or Die Trying original version. And it's still a very strong album. And honestly, like if it was just the original version of the album, it would probably be like a B or an A, honestly, but probably more like a B for the original recording of the album. And I'll put it there for now. I don't know if I'll stay there. Because I do like pretty much every song on this album. But the re-recording just does such a better job. Obviously, they're older and they have matured in their sound and whatever, and then so I mean, obviously the newest version of the album is going to sound better in general, but some of the songs are kind of transformed in terms of like, okay, now I can understand what's going on. You can kind of really hear what's going on in the background. There's a lot of really fun songs on this album. I think it does take a little bit of a dip in the middle of the album. I pretty much like there's a little bit of a middle part here where I was like, I don't know if I like these songs, like the Catastrophe, Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Hell, and Bada Bing with a Pipe. Those are kind of the ones that I don't really like. But then it gets back with Beat Down in the Key of Happy, and If You're Here, Who's Running Hell, and then Maniac at the end of it, Rise or Die, the whole chanting section. And the beginning of the album is very strong as well. And at this point, when I'm talking about an album, it's going to be more likely that there's like one or two songs I don't like instead of there being one or two songs that I do like. So I'm probably going to be more so talking about the songs that I don't like in this case, because there's way more songs that I do like on the album. But those three songs that I mentioned, they just, they're fine. And also like Bada Bing with a Pipe. I used to say that all the time on my YouTube live streams. I don't know if anyone remembers that, but I used to say that a lot. Bada Bing with a Pipe, or at least Bada Bing. And actually, my old montages that I used to do on the channel as well, I actually used to say that a lot as well. So there's a little bit of history there. In terms of like the remastered version of this, the re-recorded version, I think it shoots up to the S tier. It's got a few extra songs on there that I believe were either ones they were working on or released as EPs. And they're not like as good as the original songs on the album, but they're still fun to listen to. But the new versions of all these songs just sound so much better. They make them much like they're still like the old version of songs are still listenable. It's not like I couldn't my ears would bleed when I was listening to the older songs. But you can definitely find more appreciation with these re-recordings because of the fact that it's much cleaner. You can hear what's going on. There's just so much more like depth to the songs than in the old with the old album. No shade to the old album. It's still great, or good at least. But the 10-year anniversary remaster is definitely an S tier. It's one that I listen to quite often. Alright, next up is Explains It All by 4 Years Strong, which is this one right here, which I'll just kind of put here for the time being. If you don't know what this album is, it's a cover album that they released after Rise or Die Trying. It's in a weird place, I will be honest with you all. Not a lot of bands have the balls to do a cover album like as their third album. And I know what you're saying. Oh, Yemmy, you didn't talk about the Deftones cover album. No, I didn't, because I didn't really feel the need to talk about it because it's not in a big release. This album was a big release for the band. It actually was. They tried to sell it on store shelves. It only sold about 10,000 copies from what I remember. It was a bit of a critical failure. And that's because even though some of the covers are fun, like a cover of Absolutely Story of a Girl and Ironic by Alanis Morissette and Semi-Charmed Kind of Life, which sound pretty good, they sound good, the rest of the songs on the album just really don't work. And I think that the album really hits a low when Spiderwebs comes on, which is the No Doubt song. It just doesn't sound good at all. It doesn't sound right. And I know it's a cover, so it's like it's not going to be 100% nice, but it is one of those albums that's like you got to either be in the right mood or you got to be such a super fan of 4 Years Strong that you don't care that it doesn't sound great. Another song that I kind of was giggling while listening to because it was kind of just like that, it was so bad, was Bullet with Butterfly Wings. It just was funny bad. And then they also did a cover of In Bloom by Nirvana, and that was one that I was cringing while listening to. I was just like, wow. Like, this is This is just plain bad. But for every song that is kind of bad, there's a song that's kind of fun to listen to. As I already mentioned, Story of a Girl, Ironic, Semi-Charmed Kind of Life, She's So High, and even Roll to Me are pretty fun. And honestly, like, looking at this track listing of songs, like, sure, there's a couple in there that maybe I wouldn't have put on a cover list if I was in the band. But this is, I mean, you know, Smashing Pumpkins, Sugar Ray, No Doubt, Semi-Charmed Kind of Life, which is by Third Eye Blind, Alanis Morissette. Like, these are also the influences for me as well. So like I you know, I understand why they put all these songs on here. They're good songs. They're bands that I also resonate with. The problem is that it's just not great. I feel like this should have been like maybe a couple of these songs would have been bonus tracks on an album, or maybe you play them live, you know. But a whole album of these songs with so many of them, I mean, I would say about half of them, maybe a little bit less than half, are kind of laughably bad. No offense, of course, but they are kind of laughably bad. It's a D tier kind of album, and you might be saying, well, yeah, I mean, it's still just a cover album. Like, is it really a main part of their discography? Maybe not. Maybe it's not a part of their main part of their discography. But the fact of the matter remains that I'm putting their acoustic album on this ranking. I gotta put their cover album on the ranking as well. It seems only fair that I put both of those on there. I can't just put one, or I mean, I guess I could put neither. But I feel like both these albums, they had mainline releases. They were the big out. You know, they were the album of. You know, they didn't have any other albums out between them and the last one that came out. So I feel like it does matter to put them in the ranking. Which leads us to Enemy of the World. I have the two different versions here, the re-recording and the original version. Kind of like with Rise or Die Trying, the original version of Enemy of the World, it's a bit rough here and there because of the fact that they were using not the best equipment. But Enemy of the World is the one that really put them into this, I guess, the charts, I would say. But it's the album that I think people really started to notice them with, which is why after this, their recording just becomes better and better until they do the re-recordings and stuff like that. And Enemy of the World, I don't think the original version sounds bad at all. The place that I get hung up on is like, yeah, there's a few songs on here that I'm not a huge fan of, but there's also a lot of songs that I really, really enjoy on this album too. Like, this one also has some of my favorite songs that they've done. And of course, I think probably, I mean, I don't know if it is actually my favorite of all time, because there is one other song that I really, really like. But the first song on the album, It Must Really Suck to Be 4 Years Strong Right Now, is probably one of my favorite songs that they ever put out. And it's the first song on the album. And that really starts it off on a high. And then it kind of weans a little bit, in my opinion. But once it gets it back to like kind of the track number 5, then it kind of gets back into the groove. Then the only other song that I don't like on the album is the only song that I don't like is Flannel Is the Color of My Energy, which I like the name of, but I don't like the song itself, unfortunately. The rest of them that I was talking about, I mean, the rest of them that kind of I don't like super enjoy, but I enjoy. They're fine, you know. I'll listen to them if I'm listening to the album. But Flannel Is the Color of My Energy is one of those songs that I kind of just I don't like, so I usually skip it. But the rest, I mean, you know, the rest of the songs are pretty good. It starts off with that really, really immaculate high, though, with It Really Must Suck to Be 4 Years Strong Right Now. And the story behind that song title is a review by the Alternative Press magazine. They were reviewing a Story So Far album that came out around the same year as, I believe, Rise or Die Trying, or maybe Explains It All. I forget which one. And in the review, it said, you know, it must really suck to be 4 years strong right now because the Story So Far has taken the lead in the pop punk scene or whatever, right? So they used that as the title track of the album, which, you know, obviously the song doesn't have anything to do with that review, And they are one of those bands that has more of a goofy title here and there for their songs. I mean, it's obviously a big thing with like their second album and I guess their first album as well. This is also one of those albums that has a couple of like the weirder names for their songs, even though a few of them match up with the lyrics. Some of them are kind of crazy, like "What the hell is a gigawatt," which is a Back to the Future reference. This body pays the bills with a dollar sign at the end. Paul Revere's Midnight Ride. You know, there's a couple of these that like, okay, it doesn't really make sense. The name doesn't make sense. But then there's other ones that are like Enemy of the World, Tonight We Feel Alive, Find My Way Back, Wasting Time. Like these are all songs that, you know, the lyrics match up to the title. I do find it kind of fun when bands just kind of pick a random name for a song. I mean, Dance to Gavin Dance's Mothership does that a couple times in there too, which I always find kind of fun because, you know, when you're talking about the band, it just kind of sounds like you're saying nonsense at times because it's like, oh, it's Chucky versus the Giant Tortoise, you know. It's like, what did he say? Yeah, Day to Remember does that as well. They do that with a couple of their albums. So Enemy of the World, the original version, I think is good. And obviously Enemy of the World, the new version, is also good and probably better, which is why I'm going to put them both in A tier because I do like the original recording still to this day. But of course, the remaster is a little bit better, has a bit more songs on there as well, from like EPs and stuff that they released that they've remastered as well. And also the deluxe edition. It includes the remastered version of the deluxe edition songs. So I think that it's better than the first one, which is why it's ahead. But I don't think it's S tier quality. I think it's still A tier. But it's a very strong album for them in both regards. I think these are two really. I mean, they're both the same album, but they're very. It's a very fun album to listen to, much like with Rise or Die Trying. All right, we've made it to In Some Way, Shape, or Form. If you want to talk about For You're Strong sounding too poppy, pop-like, In Some Way, Shape, or Form is their pop album, essentially. There are still moments that sound like a For You're Strong album, don't get me wrong, but In Some Way, Shape, or Form is essentially their pop punk album. The emphasis is on the pop. The songs are held back. They lyrically, they're not as like interesting. They also don't swear at all on the album, crazy enough as that is. The songs sound a lot like a Foo Fighters, essentially. And I like Foo Fighters, but the album, I mean, it definitely feels like a bit of like a Foo Fighters kind of album where the songs they're not like Warped Tour crowd pleasers, they're like radio crowd pleasers. And there are still good moments on this album. I think that it's still, in general, like a good album. But the cons outweigh the pros in this case, where it's like there's some good songs on here, don't get me wrong, and they do go hard on a couple of tracks in here. But for the most part, it does sound like a watered-down version of For You're Strong, and they knew that because the next album, which I'll talk about in a little bit, the lead singer was quoted as saying, "We're done with the computer and generic shit," right? And they went back to being what they wanted to be, which is For You're Strong. I feel like there was studio interference with this album, where maybe they felt the need to essentially water down their sound and water down their lyrics to meet more of like an industry standard, I guess. You know, maybe be a bit more radio friendly. And if that's what they were trying to do, they hit it on the head, because this album is extremely boring to listen to at times, and it doesn't really do much to get you into the mood for, you know, like the other albums do, right? And like I said, there are a couple of songs that I do like on this album still, like Just Drive, Fairweather Fan, and boy, Heaven Wasn't Built to Hold Me, but those are really the ones that I guess I also like Stuck in the Middle. But the rest of them are just kind of like those songs that you would hear on, like I said, like a Foo Fighters album almost. It sounds that much laid back and that much restrained that it just kind of sounds like a more generic hard rock pop kind of thing. So like it's funny because Greedy Waffles and I were talking about Brain Pain, and I'm like, well, Brain Pain still goes pretty hard. And this is the album that I actually listened to Brain Pain first because I was like, well, I want to see if I was right, because I remembered a bunch of songs from this album, and I remember them going pretty hard, but I wasn't sure about the full album. And on listening to it, I was like, oh yeah, it's definitely, it definitely has its moments of like more softer stuff, but it's still a 4 Year Strong album. It still sounds pretty punky. But this one, in some way, shape, or form, this is the pop album. Like, this is the one that, like, if Greedy Waffles is like, oh, in some way, shape, or form, that's too pop-like, I'd be like, yeah, it is too pop-like. I do agree. This one, it still has good songs on it. There's still some good stuff in there, but for the most part, it does sound a bit generic. It sounds watered down. It doesn't have the same energy as the rest of their albums, and you can definitely notice that after listening to them all in a row like I did. Which is why it goes in the C tier below their first album, honestly, because at least that, with how bad the first album was like recorded and kind of sounded at times, it was fun to listen to, right? In some way, shape, or form, it's not fun to listen to per se. Like, there's still some fun moments on it, but it's one of those albums that's like, yeah, I listened to it and like, I know that's a 4 Year Strong album, but there's some songs on this album that don't sound like 4 Year Strong. It sounds more like I said before, like a generic Foo Fighter kind of pop band. And I'm not saying that Foo Fighters is generic, but it sounded a lot like Foo Fighters at times. Which, I want that. 4 Year Strong has such a unique sound. You don't. Whoa, hello. All right. Malwarebytes blocks something from this website. Probably one of these stupid ads. What was I saying? Yeah, in some way, shape, or form, not terrible, not unlistenable, but in terms of like other 4 Year Strong albums, not strong at all. Which leads us to the self-titled. Oh my god. All right, there's something on this website that's making my Malwarebytes go crazy. We'll try and ignore it for now. We won't be on here for too much longer. So yeah, next up is the self-titled album, 4 Year Strong. Wins the race of weirdest album cover for the band so far. The new album cover with the dog on the front is kind of weird. They've already revealed that that's going to be the album cover. That's a weird one. This one is also pretty weird. This guy who's like half man, half bong. One of the lead singers has like tits in the caricature here. It's just a weird album cover, and they were selling a flag of this at Warped Tour when we went the last year. They were there, and I was like, I kind of want that, but I also like, if I put that on my wall, I'm gonna be staring at this guy's tits the whole day, But that being said, if you want to know what the best 4 Year Strong album is, look no further than the self-titled album. This is exactly what I wanted from 4 Year Strong. It's exactly what got me truly into 4 Year Strong. It's just the quintessential best album that they've put out. And even though I do enjoy Brain Pain, I'm not gonna. It doesn't really hold a candle to what the self-titled album does. I was reading a review on one of the websites, and I really agreed with this one guy who said this is the sequel that Enemy of the World deserved. And even though I'm fine with the In Some Way, Shape, or Form, the self-titled album really does feel like the next step in the band, even though it took them a few, this one was released in 2015, and Enemy of the World was released in 2010, so it took them about 5 years to get there. But they got there, and they exploded with a really great album, very fun to listen to. Good flow all the way through it, even up until the end, which I'm a big flow kind of guy with albums, and this one flows really well. There's not a single song that I don't like on this album. It's one of those songs that I really love listening to. I love listening through the whole thing. There's not a single song that I would say is bad or that I would skip. My favorites on the album are probably. This is a contender for my favorite song from For You're Strong Ever, right next to It Must Really Suck to Be For You're Strong. We All Float Down Here is an amazing song. I love that song so much. It's so good. It is one of my favorites that they put out ever. Other ones that I really like, Wipe Yourself Off, Man, You're Dead. Gravity, Who Cares? Here's the Swimming with Bow-Legged Women. I'm a Big Bright Shining Star. And Go Down in History, of course, the final song on the album, which originally was an EP that they snuck this song onto the end of this album because it was so good. And I like I said, I like all the songs on the album. And this is one of those albums that it's not a huge commitment either. I think it's only like 40 minutes long or something like that. It's not a huge commitment. You can listen to the whole thing in like one sitting. It's got a lot of fun musical stuff going on. Like, For You're Strong has always been strong with their guitar work. I feel like that's the real highlight of the band. It's the guitar work. It's always got like these crazy stuff going on in the background, in the forefront as well. And they always have like these dueling guitar parts that work so well with them. You know, both the two guitarists just work so well together. And this one just really shows off like just how far they've come. And it's a great album in general. And, you know, obviously you know where it's going to go. It's going to go at the top of S tier. It's a great one. And if you haven't listened to this album, I mean, I don't know if it's going to be your thing, of course. Now, you know, everyone has their own tastes. But I think that this, you know, in terms of like, if you're looking for like a Warped Tour kind of sound, an album to make you get up and move, make you want to get up and move and chant and sing along with it and chant along with it. You can't go wrong with a self-titled album. These other albums are good in the S through B tier, of course, but this is the one that really cemented my love for For You're Strong, and I don't think there's ever going to be another album from them that reaches the same heights as this one. But hey, you never know. You never know. I've been wrong before, and I would be happy to be wrong in the future. Next up is the acoustic album, which is called Some of You Will Like This, Some of You Won't. And yes, this is actually a full album release. It came out 2 years after the self-titled album and about 3 years before Brain Pain. So it is its own album release, and it's a very interesting album. If the original album is a rough, raw kind of sounding album that is kind of unique in their discography, this one also sticks out like a sore thumb in a different way, where it's not raw, it's not heavy, it's not anything like that. It's a bunch of their songs re-recorded in acoustic form, and it sounds a bit country at times. Sounds a bit folky, I meant to say. It sounds a bit folky at times, because of the style that they play their guitars and stuff like that. You know, take off the distortion from any other fucking donkey. Alrighty, any other albums on here. It would, you know, if without distortion, yeah, I can kind of hear it. It would sound kind of folky. You know, you think that Bob Dylan's gonna come out and sing a lyric during this album, and is it a great album? No, it's more goofy than anything else, and not like a funny goofy like the, you know, the cover album. It's more of like a weird goofy where it's like it kind of works, but it also kind of doesn't. Like, you gotta be really in the right mood for this. You gotta, you know, this is not one of those albums that you're gonna listen to, you know, while you need to stay awake in the car, or you know, this is an album you're gonna listen to like right before bed. If you're a super fan of the band, sure, maybe you're listening to it along with all these other albums. But oh my gosh, Malware Bites, please. But it's one of those things. It's like, you know, it's goofy for what it is. I understand why they did it. And there's actually one new song on this album that isn't on any of the other albums, called For Our Fathers, which is a very nice song. I love listening to that, but it's not one of those things that I'm going to put into my rotation. Also, this is one of the only places you can get these. You can listen to the song This Summer Session, which is from their original album, which has never been put onto Spotify, if you remember correctly. So it's one of the only places you can listen to that song, which was an acoustic song on their first album as well. In terms of like ranking of this album, it's hard to rank it because it's like I said, it's goofy. It's kind of a weird, goofy kind of thing. It doesn't sound right, obviously. There's some nice, arrangements for these albums. I'm sorry, for these songs, but you start listening to like "It Must Really Suck to Be 4 Years Strong" right now in acoustic, and you go, why am I not just listening to this in the normal version, or "Go Down in History," or "We All Float Down Here," or "Who Cares," or "Stuck in the Middle," right? Which is why it does go at the bottom of C tier. I don't think that's bad. I think that it's just kind of like, it's there. It's kind of goofy, I guess, but it's not an album that I'm going to be revisiting much like in some way, shape, or form, which does tell me that maybe I should put their original album up to the bottom of B tier there, because I would like I do want to re-listen to that again, because it is a fun little album, little time capsule to listen to. Alright, and finally for the album ranking, we have Brain Pain, which is kind of what started this whole thing. So in terms of like how much do I like this album? I mean, I think it's still a good album. I do enjoy it. It has a bit of a heavier feel to it at times. Their new songs that they're going to be putting onto the new album are the heaviest that I've heard from the band, and it rivals stuff that happens on Brain Pain. There's a couple songs on here that are very, very heavy. Like, it feels like just very angry, very heavy songs, which I do like. Does it sound 4 Years Strongy? I mean, not all the songs sound 4 Years Strong for sure, but it's got more personality to it than in some way, shape, or form. It starts off with a really interesting song called "It's Cool," where the first minute and a half is kind of more like a build-up, and then it kind of explodes at the end. "Get Out of My Head" is a really fun, kind of bouncy song. I do like it a lot. "Talking Myself in Circles," I love this song as well. "Brain Pain," the album's name, is also a pretty good song. "Mouthful Full of Dirt," I do like that one, and "17" is also a fun one as well. "Be Good When I'm Gone" is actually the first acoustic, not the first, but it's one of those acoustic songs that it's in a weird spot on this album. It's not at the end, but it's kind of close to the end, and it's a weird song to listen to at this point because you just come off of something that's heavy, but not too heavy. It's more of like a punk rock. And then you do this acoustic song. You're like, oh, it's a nice finisher for the album. And then the next song comes in, and it starts off with this visceral scream and really heavy guitar playing. It's like, okay, that's kind of a shock. So I've always said this about the album. The flow is off. There's a bit of an odd flow to this album. I feel like maybe rearrange some of these songs. Put the acoustic song at the end, because I feel like acoustic songs should always be at the end of an album, especially if the rest of the album is like a heavy, fast, hard-hitting kind of thing. The song ends with "Young at Heart," which it's not bad, but it's not like a great song. But I think for the most part, it does stand up with the rest of the albums in their discography. Is it as good as their other albums? No, it's not as good as Rise or Die Trying or 4 Years Strong, the self-titled, or Enemy of the World, but I think that it's still good. I think it deserves to be a top of B tier at least. If on re-listen it might go up a little bit, but I think that B tier is a good place for this one. It still sounds 4 Years Strong, which is something that you can't say for a lot of what it in some way, shape, or form does, and the acoustic album, of course. And even though it does have its softer moments, for the most part, it's still a pretty heavy punk album that does have some more bouncy stuff to it that I do enjoy. I mean, the band is pop punk at its core. Sometimes they lean heavier into the pop than maybe you want them to, but the songs do still sound pop punk in general. And this album definitely leans more into the heavier side of punk and into even some metal. And the next album that they're putting out, like I said before, they've already put out 3 songs for that album as singles, and they're sounding pretty heavy. Uncooked is their most recent one, and that one is just it feels like a different band is playing the song, which it does make me a bit nervous, because I've always loved 4 Years Strong for the fact that they do make that Warped Tour style music where it's very very grandiose, very interesting songs to listen to. And even though these are still interesting songs to listen to, I do become a little bit afraid when the most recent one that they did, Uncooked, is just so heavy. It's like so heavy all the way through. The other songs are like what you expect from 4 Year Strong, but Uncooked was a bit of a surprise there. So in the end, we're gonna of course wait and see for the album. I have very high hopes for it because it's got some good. We got some good singles so far. But yeah, we'll see where it ends up in the tier list placement eventually down the road when it does come out. And in the end, 4 Year Strong they have a very strong discography for sure. Having 3 albums be in the lower tiers out of what 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Well, I guess more like 8. I'm not gonna double count the re-recording, so it'd be 8 there. That's not too bad. That's not too bad at all. And the one album is a cover album. I mean, what are you gonna do there? But I whatever. And obviously I don't like 4 Year Strong as much as like, I didn't go as in depth as like Blink-182 or Deftones because I do like those bands more. But 4 Year Strong is a fun band to listen to. They got fun albums. They got really fun music. And they only start to falter when they try to adhere to the norms of the music, at large, which is why, in some way, shape, or form, kind of fails in terms of like a 4 Year Strong album. Does it work as like a rock pop album? Sure. Does it work as a 4 Year Strong album? Not so much, pal. But that's that. And hopefully, if you're listening to this and you're a fan of 4 Year Strong, let me know what your favorite song or album is, or both, in the comments below, or if you're here in the live chat, I guess, do it right now. But yeah, I think that it's a toss-up between We All Float Down Here and It Must Really Suck to Be 4 Year Strong, which I know is kind of basic, sure, but it's still, there's still 2 great songs that kind of duel in my head as to which ones are which one's my favorite of all time from them. And if you haven't listened to 4 Year Strong, I would I'm trying to think, because Callous is more so of like a more laid-back kind of connoisseur, as we learned from the Deftones rankings. You would probably like In Some Way, Shape, or Form. I will be honest, because it is more of like a laid-back, hollow version of 4 Year Strong. But if I was a guessing man, if I was a betting man, I would say, hey, maybe try out the self-titled album and see if you vibe with it and go from there. Because I guess if you start off with what the best that they have to offer, I mean, sure, it's not, the only way to go is down, I guess, at that point, but maybe you'll like it. Maybe you'll be like, oh, I like this. But if I was being realistic, I would say you'd probably like the In Some Way, Shape, or Form album, because it's the more generic, light. Not, I mean, I guess generic is the wrong word here, but it's more of a light 4 Year Strong experience. All right, that's that. I'm closing this out. Any questions, comments, or concerns? Fuck off. But yeah, that's gonna do it for today, folks. Appreciate everyone stopping by, swinging by, saying howdy do, and listening. Thank you to anyone who is currently lurking as well. I do appreciate that, and I'm sure that anyone who's listening to this in the VOD form on Spotify and or YouTube, I hope that you're enjoying as well. I still plan on doing these every other week throughout the summertime. But the summertime is the contest for the live streams, and we're starting off with Assassin's Creed Freedom Cry on Saturday. So if you would like to join and check out that game, that's the first one for our summer catalog. And we're going to be rolling marbles every time we finish a game and getting a random one from my 300+ game backlog. So I'm going to try and get through as many games as I possibly can. I made sure to omit any games that were longer than 5, 6, 7, probably 10 hours. I omitted anything above 10 hours because I just really want to try and get some stuff done. I feel like I've been kind of marking time per se on streams this year in terms of completing games. I feel like usually by the time that summer comes around, I've hit a stride, and I feel like I haven't gotten there yet. So with the summer backlog bonanza, I think we're going to hit that stride. So if you want to join that contest or see what it's all about, head over to the Discord, link in the description as usual for all of my podcasts. There is a new episode of Film Freaks with a Z coming out the day after we record this live on Friday. We talk about Puss in Boots, The Last Wish. It was a fun conversation if you want to check that out. If you haven't watched Puss in Boots, The Last Wish, I highly, highly recommend doing that before listening to the podcast, because you're going to like it. I can almost guarantee it. You're at least going to like it. I don't think there's anyone out there who hates Puss in Boots: The Last Wish. And if you do hate Puss in Boots: The Last Wish, fuck off, as usual. And then also, if you want to check out the Fair 64, I do that every weekend. It's video game news and occurrences. Last week was a pretty loaded episode with Senua's Saga, X-Defiant, etc. This week is going to be another loaded episode. Multiverses was re-released, and I have a lot of things to say about that. And there's also a couple other games that I would like to talk about as well. So in the end, if you don't want to, that's fine. I appreciate you being here and now for this episode of Ferret Cafe Podcast, hosted by me, Yemmy the Ferret. And I do appreciate everyone who's been chatting, lurking, etc. As I already said, I'm talking in a bit of a circle right now, which means that I should probably end this soon. But anyway, I'll see you all on Saturday, if not earlier in the Discord. I'm Yemmy the Ferret, and I'm out of here. Have a good rest of your night, and au revoir.